Welcome to Wine Country at Work. I'm Ralph DeAmicis, your host, and today I'm talking with John Wittig, who is one of the managers who have taken over some of the important commercial enterprises in our town and helping kind of shepherd them towards a good future here in Sonoma. So, John, thank you so much for helping me today with this and explaining a bit of what you've been doing with these great historic buildings in our town. So which projects are you working on?
Ralph, it is such a treat to be with you today. Thank you. Most centrally, we've got the Sonoma Cheese Factory on the plaza and the Sonoma's Best. Those are the two big markets. Within them, we've got several other businesses from Sonoma's Best Cottages, Sonoma's Best Coffee Shop, Sonoma's Best Deli, Sonoma Wine Merchant, the Butcherman over at Cheese Factory, coffee shop and a wine room over there. So it's a lot within those two buildings.
Well, it seems it's nice that you seem like you're cooperating with other people in the area, like the Butcherman, for instance. And then I know you brought in a very good somm over at the at Napa's Best. So it's nice because you're developing a good team of people who are also invested in seeing this improve.
Absolutely. I mean, at least for me as a leader, I think that's the most important thing I do every day is pick who and develop them. And with Todd, our somm at Sonoma's Best, we were very lucky to inherit him. He was a part of the previous team. We really saw, both his talent and his passion for the work and worked really hard to keep him. So we love Todd, and his program is truly, really special. He's got a great little wine shop. There's not a lot of places you can drink everybody's wine and hang out with a winemaker right next to you, and so it's a really special spot, and we felt like we've not done much to change it. We've just really added fuel to Todd's fire and supported him in his project. So it's a really special place.
Well, I have to say, in some ways, you're a very special person. We were talking a little bit about your background and ways in which I think it really fits in beautifully because, after all, so much of what happened in Sonoma was, people like, Mariana Guadalupe Vallejo, who came up from Monterey, from Count Harasti, who came from Hungary. Where were you born?
Gosh, I do have an interesting backstory. I was born in Argentina. I'm born in Buenos Aires and lived there till I was 10. Spanish was my first language, went to school there, and moved to Costa Rica till I was 18. 18 came to college up here in the States, spent a couple years in the Middle East, spent a couple years in Mexico, and settled down here. Costa Rica is still the only place I consider, I guess it's still my home. I do live here in Sonoma now and love it, but I get down there as often as I can. I do love it.
What is it? I'm trying to remember. Is the word temora? Is that Spanish or is that Italian? Temora, it means home.
It's got to be Italian. Casa or hogar would be.
But temora means like home of your heart.
Yes, there we go. That's a good phrase. Yep, Costa Rica's home of my heart. Hopefully Sonoma will be.
Well, it grows on you very, very much. It's it is a very heart-based place, and they really are. Like they said, they've been so benefited by people coming from foreign lands with a vision of what they wanted to accomplish here. Even to when General Vallejo came north, he came north as a lieutenant. I mean, he was born in Monterey. And if you think about the distance from Monterey to Sonoma when you're going on horseback.
Yeah, not short.
It was not sure. But also, what is your background professionally?
Yeah, prior to this, I was the CEO of Coffee Bar on the West Coast. They're a brilliant little coffee shop. Do still love them very dearly. And so I spent a good time in coffee. I spent 12 years at Pete's prior to that. I spent a few years up in Seattle working on farm-to-table concepts. Brought a couple of things down here to California, and I've played a lot in the hospitality world. I would say what I'm most passionate about is the internal work with the team. I love organizational development. I love the organism being healthy. I think a lot of what happens in the building and a lot of what happens in front of a guest has to do with that. Is how healthy are we on the inside? Are we authentic to our mission? Are we living it out? Are we breathing it? Are we talking about it every day? And so that's really where I feel I have the most impact is, really developing a passionate and expert level team that can deliver the great mission we set. And
well, I think it's a great advantage having been in different cultures and also having, lived in Argentina and then going to Costa Rica, you had to kind of remake your life again. And then coming to the United States to study, you're having to deal with new people all the time. And hospitality is all about meeting new people.
Absolutely. And I think, just both from the culture and just from experience, I think my story is unique, but it's not that unique. I think a lot of us are on a journey. A lot of us are finding home, and a lot of us have found that Sonoma is really a lovely place to do all of that, and so I find that I speak as much Spanish throughout my workday as I do English, with just, who works in our shops, and it's been a great advantage to feel like I'm one of you, and we're doing this work together. There's no separation for us. We're a pretty flat organization and really, really try to see what's special about each individual, and if you look at, how we structure our business between Todd at the wine room, Juan, our chef, at the Butcherman, it's really programs built around people and built around stories. And both those guys have incredible stories behind what they do. And we're just lucky to have them on our team and to champion their work, So in many ways, what we're doing is easy that way. It's just very, very hard to build something that will last forever. We bought these buildings, we're not renting them, we're not leaving, we're here to stay forever. And so we really have to build something that can last that long, and you have to have a longer term mindset about that. You have a longer term mindset about what success looks like and what your team's going to look like. And, I feel like we're off to a really, really great start. We just love this community and the way that they've embraced us. And I've never had a professional experience like this where it's not unusual for me to cry with a guest. People are very passionate about these buildings and about the history that we've inherited, and they care very much about the work we do. And as a business owner, as a business leader, it's just a very, very special set of circumstances that are all adding up to something I hope collectively we love, and we're very proud of as a community that, these buildings are back alive, that when you walk in them, you walk out with more, not with less, and at least thus far, we've heard we're doing a good job. So you'll have to stop in and tell us specifically, but we're so proud. We're so proud of these projects and so proud to be a part of it,
And it's a process. It takes a long time. I
Yes,
tell you,
it does.
the fact that when I found out you spoke Spanish, I was overjoyed. I speak Spanish porque cuando voy de hablar con una persona en su propio idioma,
Sí.
it makes them feel
Sí.
so much more comfortable.
Sí.
And so many of our Spanish-speaking people here are nervous because of all the issues going on with ICE. When you speak to them in their own language, it says, "I understand how you think. I understand how you feel." Suddenly they don't feel like there's a wall between you, and that's so important in management to make people feel that you are watching out for them. A good leader makes their team feel safe, and that's so important. The fact that you understand the history, this area was part of Spain and then Mexico longer than was part of the United States. People forget that, but it wasn't until really at the time of the upsurgence of the wine industry, the premium wine industry, when we started getting a lot of Mexican families moving here because we needed those highly skilled people to go into the vineyards 10 times a year. They used to grow all the grapes from the back of a tractor. But when you get to these high-end wines, now you have to go in and do pruning and watch the plant and get to know every single plant. And the Mexican families who came here understood this in ways that, is so important to creating world-class wines. If you think about it, John, we went from being the ends of the earth, the northern tip of the Spanish Empire, to being a world-class wine producer and tourism destination in about 160 years.
Wild.
That's like in winemaking, that's a blink of an eye.
Yeah, sure.
It's phenomenal. So that's why I say when you view the history here, our history only goes back to 1820, which is, not that long ago. So the people who come in have a lot of leverage. It's not like being in Europe where, the history goes back 1,000 years. Whatever you do is small, but what you're able to do has so much more leverage because that timeline is a little shorter, How are you dealing with the structures of the buildings? Has that been an issue for you?
That's a good question. Even if you look beyond Sonoma, we've got a couple projects on the peripherals. We have Chambers Landing up in Tahoe. We're about to make a big splash in Cloverdale. That's next for us. And what ties all these projects together is really the actual physical building. I remember when I was at Coffee Bar and these other companies, you as an operator, you really avoid the historical buildings as much as you can because they're so difficult. There's so many constraints, limitations, and for good reasons. But as an operator, they're challenging. So what ties all our projects together is almost the inverse of that. We love these historical buildings. We know that it's difficult for these buildings to find good ownership, and ownership that won't cut corners, ownership that will honor the past and make it modern. And so in many ways, we've found this beautiful little niche of, where we get to revitalize spots that are important to families, important to communities, and kind of keep that heritage going. And so, part of our ownership group was one of the families at Chambers Landing on the beach growing up as a kid. And so we are now protecting that for the next 20 years through our involvement there, and hope to do the same here. The amount of stories that we hear of, I used to work here at the ice cream counter when I was a kid, or, this was where I came after school. And so you're absolutely right. This timeline, we get to be a part of the story, not an echo of it. The story's still being told on these buildings and on the town, and we get to actually play a part in the cast, and so that's super cool. The buildings are tough. There's neglect, there's issues that build up over the years, but one of the things that makes us unique is that we have really a full construction company underneath our own roof, and so we handle all the building of our stuff ourselves. And so it allows for flexibility on timelines. It allows to make, you uncover a wall and you find something new and you can pivot quickly. And so, if you've walked into either Sonoma Cheese Factory or Sonoma's Best, every week you'll see change. Every week you'll see a new station being set up, a wall being painted. And I think what these buildings have needed is love and respect, and somebody who will work with the bones and make it beautiful again. And I think our construction team has done a lovely job. Like, if you go into Sonoma's Best, we're about to open our liquor bottle room, and it's going to be this great program that mirrors Todd's wine sourcing, and really provides a great place to find specialty liquor in Sonoma. And if it just totally changed the look of the inside of the building. We've got these really talented guys who can build pretty much anything we dream of. And so, yes, the buildings are tough, but again, we're uniquely positioned to deal with that challenge because it's what we love to do.
Well, I have to tell you, after having managed factories and buildings for many, many years, having your own team in-house is a massive advantage.
It's a dream.
Because the thing that gives most building owners gray hair is dealing with contractors.
I've been very lucky in that. I've worked with some great contractors, but there's a sense of we have full control on the whole thing. From who we staff to who we have build to every little detail, and we love that. We care for it to come out just right, and so to have full control on that is really wonderful.
And you're controlling the timeline.
Yep.
Which is incredibly important when you're in retail and you've got team members who are getting ready to take over that particular part of the process. Mm-hmm. Is the space actually going to be there when they're ready?
I mean, I think you would be so surprised if we played back some of our timelines. Oftentimes customers were there at 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. and then from 7 p.m. till 5 a.m. we'd shut the store down, and just the whole construction team would be in there doing their work, and they'd clean up before open, and no one ever knew any different. So, to be able to do things like that where you're not having to shut, an important community location down for a month to renovate or something like that, it's really helped us yeah, just to grow without having to stop, you know?
But that kind of flexibility in a business or any enterprise really is tremendously valuable.
Yes.
You know, so.
And I think it keeps it exciting for you guys. You know, literally every time you come in the building, something's changed, you know? And so it just feels like that's really hard to do with an old building. You know, you kind of get the lay of the land and you appreciate its charm, but to continually transform it is amazing.
Oh yes, well I have a background in building design and environmental design, consulting that for years. So I'm always very conscious of how a building feels when I walk in. Does it feel solid? Does it feel cared for? Does it feel, or does it feel like someone's been ignoring this for a long time and shouldn't have been? So I've been very impressed as I've walked into your spaces. So we're going to take just a little break. Let us take a little breath, and then we're going to come back with John Wittig of the team that's working with Sonoma Cheese Shop and Sonoma's Best after the break. Welcome back to Wine Country at Work. I'm Ralph DeAmicis, your host. We're talking again with John Wittig, who's part of the team that's restoring and revitalizing, is probably the right way to describe it, some of our important institutions here in Sonoma, the Sonoma Cheese Shop, the Sonoma's Best, among others. And you have other properties in the area as well, but you're having to work with diverse teams. What's your particular management style? I mean, you've worked with coffee shops. So I'm sure you had to deal with a lot of different shops in different places. Yeah. What's your, like, in terms of empowering your managers and your overall approach? What's your kind of?
I love the question, and it's what I love to do the most is to talk about this. I have been very, very privileged to have grown up in my career under a lot of great mentors, great leaders. And one thing that stuck out to me is this idea of inspired work is the most profitable work. And what I mean by that is there just has to be more to a work experience than doing work, you know? And what I've found is that, you know, your systems, your SOPs, your training, that really needs to do the practical part of the work. You know, the people need to get capable quick. But beyond that, the sustainability portion, you know, what makes a business special? Like, you think about coffee, you've got 14 coffee shops in any given town. You know, you got to stand out. And I've always felt that leading from a place of inspiration, of meaning, of the why we do this work and helping people make this transition. I think, you know, we work with a lot of young people, and they're learning how to do their career, and you know, they're gonna be a part of their life for the rest of their life, and they're either gonna approach it as an interruption to what they want to do with their life, or they're gonna approach it as a meaningful part of it. And so, as a leader, if you can connect a lot of those dots for them, you know, what are you passionate about? What actually gives you joy on any given day? I find that most of those things happen at the workplace as often as they happen at home. And if you hire well and you focus on an authentic team of good people, good-hearted people who are humble and care about what they do and want to do a good job, you really just have to infuse all these lovely ingredients with energy, you know? And as human beings, you know, we're inspired today talking about this stuff because we care about it, you know? And so if you hire people who care about coffee or care about wine, and you give them life juice, you tell them, hey, this work really matters, and, you know, this person's actual life is being touched by the things you do today, and their life is better because we're doing this work. Right. You know, if you can connect them to the history, if you can connect them to the community, if you can connect them to their personal goals of, you know, one day I'd like to be a som. There's a way to do that here. We will pay you to become a som, you know? And so I think that's the role I've loved to play in this organization, is really being the source of energy for the work, of being the source of encouragement, of coaching, of challenging people. I find that the group that we typically hire doesn't grow up with good examples of mentors and coaches and authority figures, and there's an opportunity for us as an employer to really help them shape a life that they would love to live in. And I take that responsibility really seriously, you know, to from the barista to the dishwasher, that they know me, they know what I'm about, that they know I believe in them, that they have my support. Culture in a company is everything you do added together. Every single thing, just that with a plus sign in between it. Everything I say, everything I did. And you grab 30 people and you do that math with them, and I think whatever's on the other side of the equation determines whether you succeed or not. And I want to surround my team with energy to do the work, and with purpose, and with a clear vision of why this really matters. And I think our buildings make that part easy.
Well, I've oftentimes believed that the best thing a young person can have is a really good boss, because they learn such good habits, and they learn to enjoy the work.
Yep.
And the worst thing you can have is a bad boss who basically convinces you should work for yourself because these people drive you crazy. But a good boss teaches you important things. And so many times the first job that person has, or the first training they get, patterns the rest of their lifetime.
Yep.
You see this like with attorneys, for instance. They go to school for law and they go into a different field, but still they think in that same logical way. Or physicians, or any profession, it sets up a way of thinking.
Yep.
And with hospitality, so much of it's about making sure that you're looking and listening to the customer. How much are you there for them? And recognizing that human interaction with them is so important. So, of course, you'd expect your best managers to value that.
You have to model that. At a minimum, you have to model it, value it, champion it,
Yeah. Exactly. And I've seen companies where, an executive will come in and be completely oblivious to who their team is, and which is not something you can do at all in Sonoma, because of Sonoma's rich history and its, like I said, it's the most historic spot in California. I mean, they value it's like when you go to Florence, they're very conscious of their history.
Totally.
They live with it every single day, and they want people to understand that that's part of who they are. Now, with your young people, this is interesting. What age range are you usually hiring in?
It really depends on the business and on the role. But just the nature of our retail businesses, we do hire a lot of young people, and we do often are people's first job. And again, you can see everything as a challenge or an opportunity. I see that as an opportunity. My background, my degrees in education, I believe that teaching is like an essential human function. It's part of everything we do. And I love giving people the best start to something that's going to be a very important part of their life forever, and if I can be a good boss, if I can instill some good habits, if I can help them represent themselves well and their desires. And again, I think a lot of it comes down to hiring the right people, being patient there, and ensuring that the engine, the character is healthy. Skills can be taught, and you add skills, inspiration, and a good person, and you have a great employee.
Well, it's funny. I have a friend, Eddie Heights, who's a tasting room manager, and he had never been a tasting room manager before. He was always in restaurants. He wrote a great book about hospitality, and he said, he was hired for the personality.
Yep.
He said, I could always teach him the skills.
Yep.
But if there was someone who liked people, then we were off to a great start. It is a field that encourages that. I think it's interesting too. It must be difficult sometimes because the younger generation today has so much exposure to technology that it can be so distracting that it's very easy for them to, kind of lose focus. And keeping focus in any business is key to it. I always say that one of the keys, what we would tell people in stores all the time, is always make sure you have a bell on the door, because when the bell goes off as the person comes in, it tells the staff, I got to wake up.
Yeah.
I got to pay attention.
Yeah.
And it reminds them, right. And the bell got put there by the boss, so it reminds them, I have a boss who actually cares about this stuff. Those kind of indicators about things to remind you, to help you to refocus. And like I said, even for myself, having a phone with me, a smartphone with me, it can be so distracting, and I'm someone who's trained to be very focused. I imagine for young people who grow up with it, it must be challenging at times.
Yes and no. I think this is what I mean when the rules have to do the work for you here. You just have to set good rules that allow for the behaviors you want, you know? So if cell phones are a distraction, we ask people to keep them in lockers. But, you know, I always see the opportunity in everything. I think we are all, young or old, flooded with a disproportionate amount of information every day. And what that does is it kind of makes us numb and just, pretty reactionary, and our attention span gets real short. And it also leaves a giant vacuum, a desire for the opposite, for meaningful information, for purpose behind my actions, for something to believe in. And so, you know, again, you can see the challenge, or you can see the empty space it leaves behind. And we feel that, good rules plus, hey, what we do today matters. You shouldn't need the chime. You should internally be waiting for this moment to happen. And so, you know, of course, that's very aspirational, and chimes chimes definitely help.
Yes.
But there's the balance between how do we get done what we need today, the chime, and how do we develop people whose internal subconscious motor says somebody walked in the door.
Yeah, that idea of long term, of being able to sustain it is so important. We were talking about that before. That one of the talks we do, the key to it is help people work in a long term way and that they don't get burned out. Which, of course, in hospitality,
it's a real thing.
You can get to the point where I can't talk to another person. For many years, when we were much busier here, we've had a relatively quiet year here in wine country this year. But in the past, in the tour business, we would get to a point where we got to September, and that was the time when most tourism areas got quiet. And we had been running full tilt since June. And we got to September, and we realized we were coming into our busiest season now. And everyone in hospitality going to look at each other and say, oh my gosh, this is going to get busier now, and kind of hunker down. And you could really be, I remember a guy saying to me one time, it was like stupid busy. It was like so beyond belief.
Yep. I'm familiar with that.
yes. So I think purpose is, I think that's such an interesting idea, that people have a very strong sense of purpose, because that's the thing that does sustain you.
And in hospitality, there's usually a hook that got you there, whether it's wine, it's coffee, it's the people interaction, it's that sense of you're providing something special. And I think if you take the time, you can usually find out what that hook is for the person. And I think all of us are hungry for somebody to invest into us, So if you see early signs of success in a person, and you continue to give them opportunities, I think it kind of plays itself out, like health breeds health, and I guess making it contextual to the business and kind of the conversation we're having, I don't want this to be lost. Like I think Sonoma would be happy if we had great programs, beautiful buildings, et cetera, but I think they would be happier if they knew the person who is here to stay also cares about the town that works inside the building. And, I think we have a responsibility to be a good employer in Sonoma. I think we have a responsibility to, to be of integrity, especially with our predecessors, to be people that are trustworthy. And, maybe that has a kind of the symptoms of that are expressed over a longer period of time. But I think that stuff comes out too. I think being a good employer is difficult, and we need to step up to the task and be part of the good character of the community. And so while this stuff sounds, fluffy and fun to talk about, I actually think it really matters when you intend to stay in a community. You got to be a good employer. You have to be good to your people.
Oh, that's everything. That's everything. People don't realize. I mean, I've worked since I'm 11 years old. I've run multiple businesses. the work you do is so essential to how you think of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's why it's so difficult when people retire and they suddenly don't have a mission. They go, well, what am I supposed to do now?
All those people need to come talk to me and come sell cheese.
There you go. There you go. What's funny?
We need some expert cheese people to.
And this was a big dairy center for a long time. It's interesting. This was the Sonoma cheese shop was part of a whole series of families that did great dairy in this area. Still, California is still the biggest dairy producer in the United States, and the North Bay, especially Sonoma, is the center for that.
Well, we do have the best cheese counter in town, so you just have to come check it out, Ralph.
Oh, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. Well, the first was a Bellwether Farms was the first sheep cheese one on the West Coast, and at the time there were only 2 on the East Coast in the entire country, and they bought sheep to help them deal with their grass on their property. Figure we have some lamb, and then they thought, we can make cheese, and they actually had to travel to Italy with an Italian dictionary to learn how to make cheese from the experts, and now they produce these beautiful sheep cheeses in the area, and Sonoma has, I think, as I believe, Sonoma has the largest organic dairy cooperative in the country.
Oh, wow.
Sonoma is an important center when it comes to agriculture. I mean, people like Luther Burbank, who, he was the one who created basically the potato that saved Ireland from the potato famine. And it's the same potato they serve in that McDonald's, amazingly enough. I mean,
wow.
It's, he said that of all the places on the planet, Sonoma was the most blessed by nature that he had ever visited,
Wow.
and so much of the work he did was so important. But there's a lot of things like that in Napa. So when you come here and you say, well, coffee, if a person's into coffee or into wine, it's their hook.
Yeah.
Flavor and scent is so connected to us emotionally.
Yep.
Makes us connected to our soul. And how we feel about things. There's no intellectual separation when it comes to flavor and scent. It's right there on our nose. It's right there on our palate. It's the most intimate of senses. So we're going to take a little break now here at Wine Country at Work. We're here with John Wittig, and we're going to come back after the break, and we're going to continue, and we're going to look at the future of where they're going with this project. Welcome back to Wine Country at Work. I'm Ralph DeAmicis. You can find us at winecountryatwork.com. We're talking with John Wittig today. He's part of the team that is rejuvenating the Sonoma Cheese Shop, the Sonoma's Best, and other properties around town. And John, who are the members? You have three main members on your team, your three core people.
It's a fun story. I really don't know how this all came about, other than I think it's one of our business partners' genius to build a great team. There's 3 of us, Chris Fanini, Frankie Houston, and myself. We all come from wildly different backgrounds, which makes it work because we have kind of a critical mass of needed skills. So Chris does a lot of the finance and tech, a lot of the real estate. Frankie comes from fine dining, from the wineries. I have a lot of organizational development, a lot of retail experience, coffee, and so we aggregated the 3 of us and said, hey, we've got something here. We've got the energy, we have the drive, we have the resources. Let's get after it. And so about a year ago, we formed the hospitality company. And like I said, we started with Chambers Landing in Tahoe, a beautiful historic property. Celebrated our 150th anniversary this year, believe it or not. Not a lot of businesses get to do that in the States. So it was really a special summer. And very quickly, this opportunity came up, and we've always loved the town and thought, hey, if we can do business here, that would be really, really fun. And this opportunity came up, and we just jumped. Some rigorous thought, some analysis, but it really was we're gonna do this. And so we got the buildings in June, and it's been over a year now, which I was telling you earlier. It's just really amazing how quickly that goes by. And at the same time, you parse it out in your head and you think, wow, we've had some amazing experiences and memories so far. And yes, it has been a year, and our relationships do reflect that. And so yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. It's been a lot of work. We don't sleep a lot. We just wake up every day saying, what can we do to progress? And Yeah, I'm sure at some point you'll get to meet everyone. We're always in the stores. We don't work from home. We don't have a corporate office. We just rotate around our properties, and
that's very important.
Yeah,
that's very important. That, having your team like on site. I forget which one of the big clothing companies. In fact, I forget which one it is, but they require even the senior staff, the chief executives, to work in the store on the floor selling a certain number of days of the month, even though they have like 50 stores, because they want them to be in contact with what the customers are looking for. So yeah, that's a very important part.
With just three of us, there's not the corporate team, there's not a marketing team, like it's just three of us, and you really have to be close to what's actually happening and what the needs are and what people are saying, and also we believe that there's a lot of juice to squeeze out of every lemon. Every day is a lemon, and you can get it half a lemon squeeze or you can get a full squeeze, and we just think being in person with our team, rubbing shoulders, doing the work side by side is the way we get the most juice out of each day.
It's interesting how you brought it together, because you came out of the coffee world, which is love management, coffee being the second most traded commodity in the world. Is it Frankie came out of the wine world?
And fine dining.
And had she worked in this area before in Sonoma, Napa?
Yeah, she was at John Ash for a while.
Oh, okay.
So she's actually from Marin. She has spent a lot of her time here, and that helped us too. We really needed a wine expert. We needed somebody who understood the geography and had some contacts here, and so
that was very valuable. Yes.
Yeah, Frankie is incredible, and she's a great operator, the best operator I've worked with. And so it allows me to play the inspiration role. She can really drive the details and the execution, and it allows me to kind of encircle around her and the team and say, hey, like this was awesome. Let's keep going. What do you need? So we found kind of a magic recipe in how we all work together. But it's certainly a lot of work for sure.
Well, it's also very funny that if you think about your different experiences. You've dealt with a lot of people who have really had way too much caffeine. And she's dealt with a lot of people who had like way too much wine. But, there's a certain talent that has to go with dealing with those particular groups, calm down or wake up, so you come to it from two different angles, which is really very
on the same day.
Yeah, on the
same day in the same building.
Right.
It's really fun. You usually have a coffee shop or a bar or a wine room. And so to kind of do all these things all at once, it just makes a really unique experience. You can go into the cheese factory and kind of do anything, from eating the best barbecue in town to having the best glass of wine to having a great cup of coffee. It's pretty unique that way. I don't know a lot of places in Sonoma you can, park once and do it all.
Well, many times, on a day of wine touring, about 2 or 3 in the afternoon, all the lines in front of the coffee shops build up just for that reason, because they've been tasting wine.
Yeah.
And many times, some people are sensitive to wines and they'll get a headache and such. And I always tell them, well, stop and get a double espresso. You get that adrenaline going. That will usually solve it. Get rid of the histamine reaction. We don't have as much of a problem here because our wines are very clean, but there's therapeutic uses on both sides.
Yes, sir.
But I think it's interesting too, because you develop a certain mindset in each one of these industries. Because I just did in fact, I think for like last week's show, I did a thing, or a couple of weeks show about, actually it was one for our TV show about the drugs and foods that we love. And it talks about coffee and how valuable it is. And there was a great story about the King of Sweden who was convinced when tea and coffee showed up in Europe, which was a relatively recent thing in the 1600s, that caffeine was bad for you. So he hired twin brothers and had one of them drink lots of tea each day and had one of them drink lots of coffee each day, and then hired doctors to watch them and monitor them, right? To see, he was sure it was going to destroy their health. Well, the brothers outlived the king, and then the brothers outlived the doctors. So there's,
So I think the moral is, if you want to live a long life, come to Sonoma's Best, get a coffee, go to the wine room, get a glass of wine, you'll live a long life.
It's like Peter Mondavi, who lived to be, I think, 100 years old, and Mike Gerges. A lot of these winemakers, I remember, Rodney Strong had been the song and dance guy in theater for many years, and he became a winemaker Because he said, no, I couldn't be an old song and dance man, but I could be an old winemaker.
Yes, sir.
And he lived to be a good age. You know, there's a real history with both of these. I think it's just wonderful too that you chose two buildings between these two that both face, because of the way the town's done, are faced due south. Which is the sign of stability. When you design buildings, if you face it due south, they tend to be the most stable of buildings. It's hard to get them to change is the hard part. You probably have that's probably the difficulty of how do we change this?
Yes.
You know, because they're so inclined to not change, you know? And, you know, I imagine it has to be a very gradual process.
Yes, it is. And it's the balancing trick of developing what you already have and continuing to grow, you know? And so we're always going to keep the special charm to the building, but you know, we hope that it's something we're proud of today too, you know, that reflects a building people want to spend time in today. And so you know, we are just about to open up the liquor room at Sonoma's Best, and that's a great example. It's got the old beat board behind it, but it's got, you know, brand new LED shelves with internal lighting. And so it's you know, how do you play with those elements, and how do you keep the things that make it feel like this was what I remember when I was a kid, but also be like, wow, that's really cool. Like, how did they do that? You know?
Because I saw the Sphere in Vegas, and so therefore this is not so far off.
You know, and so we got the liquor program starting in a couple weeks. I think I shared with you that we have an interest in Cloverdale and have a couple businesses in development there. And so, you know, the challenge is just not to get too spread too thin, to use our energy well on the things that matter every day, and and to keep developing meaningful programs that get people to come back in.
Do you feel like you've been able to find good managers for these sites?
Absolutely. Thankfully, people love working in Sonoma, and Sonoma attracts a lot of great talent. Like I said earlier, I don't think there's anything more important you can do than picking your team, and we've gotten very lucky and made a lot of good decisions. Peter Kelly at Sonoma is just a brilliant GM. We have Todd, we have Juan, you know, who learned how to butcher animals from his dad in Mexico. You know, it's just these incredible talent who, again, I think when they find a source of inspiration and good leadership, say, hey, I'll build my shop here, you know. And so thankfully we have an incredible team of leaders, and you know, I think about Michelle, who's been at Sonoma's Best for 12 years, tying all those people back into us now, you know. And so
I'll tell you, one of the things, the fact that you have your own construction team, right, and the fact that they see you doing these improvements on the building, you know, it really inspires for them. Oh, they're here for a while.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
if you know, if you think, imagine living in a little like European village in the old days. The outer walls were what protected your life, but you didn't build them. Your father's fathers built them and maintained them, and it's what made you feel safe. It's why I said, like so many times, the best thing a good manager does is make their team feel safe. Whereas you're improving these structures, the people inside are feeling, oh, I can stay here. And you know, remember, they're attracted to a building like that because it is so stable. It faces south. It's got the full sun on the front. It's, you know, it's the full. It's like being on the plaza. It's the full sun where the trees can grow and the children can play.
You know, funny that you bring the sun up. The sun is really the reason we opened up the coffee shop at Cheese Factory. When we took over, it didn't have a coffee shop, and so imagine that 11,000 square foot building opening at 11 a.m. You know, there was just nothing. We were losing half the day, and so, you know, I was looking at the plaza and I saw, you know, these morning places, and they're all in the shade. You know, they're all in the shade. There's no place to sit in the sun and have a cup of coffee, and so I thought, we got a building that faces south. I've got beautiful sunshine, you know, kind of going across the sky all day long. And so we set out tables on the patio, and sure enough, people came and sat in the sunshine, you know.
Very smart.
So it's this combination of understanding the building you have and the things you want to get done and the things that the community is looking for.
One thing you're doing that's really innovative, and you told me this before, that you and Frankie changed positions. One of you goes up to Tahoe,
Yes.
one comes down here, and so you
Yes.
keep switching back. Do you ever see each other? I mean,
In the summer, barely.
You wave as you go
I
past?
think there's
I mean-
probably been 2 or 3 days we've been in the same room this summer. But
funny.
it's just the peak season. It's execution time. You know, we got all the properties are firing hard, and so we got to divide and conquer.
But every time you arrive there, she's done things.
Yeah, it's a high five. It's a high five, and you know we
And
move
she
forward.
gets there and see. Do you ever
Yeah.
end up calling each other and saying, "What was that day?"
All the time. Frank and I speak on the phone 50 times a day. We just have to be of one mind. You know, she has to finish my sentence. I have to finish hers, and you know, and the team also benefits from getting, you know, 2 sets of experiences,
Right.
2 perspectives. It's hard work to stay aligned. It's hard work to be consistent. But if we can do that dance well, there's more Play-Doh on the table for the team.
Well, it's funny. I've been consulting for pretty much my entire adult life at this point. But one of the reasons why they have consultants come in is to have fresh eyes.
Yep.
And so every time you guys switch, you're coming
fresh
onto
eyes.
it kind of with fresh eyes, and you're also coming with what you learned from the process you did at the other location.
Correct.
So it really accelerates that ability to make, you know, positive changes. It's a very, it's a bit of a sacrifice because you forget where you left your book.
I don't know where any of my stuff is, Ralph. I don't know where my keys are. It just is the way it is. But but you know, it also, those of us that do this work for a career, it's the drug we love, you know, to be where the action is. And you know, while it is difficult and we feel a little bit like burnt toast by the end of the summer, when you do it well, it's awesome. You feel like you're double the leader, you know, and that you have somebody representing your interests when you're gone. And yeah, it's been great.
Well, it's funny. I have a dear friend who runs the main floor of a large winery, and he grew up working in restaurants. And I'm just about to help him now. The family, we're going to do a cookbook for the family restaurant, and it's that, you know, that longevity of flavors. You know, the cheese shop has been there for so many years. It goes back to the original dairy families that were in this area, and people have been nurtured by that for so long. Yeah. So, you know, it really is a big responsibility taking that over. I have to say, I really respect that.
I don't think we knew what we were getting into at the beginning, but you know, the community very, very quickly said this really matters. I remember that first weekend that the 3 of us showed up in town and said, "Hey, we did this thing. Please be nice to us." You know, it was just a line of people who wanted to meet us, to talk to us, to say, "How can we help? You know, please invite us to this. Please, you know, come be a part of this." And the community has just been incredible. They have shown up every single day. So very lucky.
I have to say, I think that it's in very good hands.
Thank you, sir.
And I have a lifetime of experience in business, and I'm very impressed. So
thank you, sir.
Wish you the best of luck with it. And like I said, like everybody else, if there's anything I can do to help.
That is awesome.
You help me.
Take you up on it, Ralph.
Oh, please do. So we're talking with John Wittig. He is part of the team that is reviving the Sonoma Cheese Shop, the Sonoma's Best. And I hope you enjoyed the show. I found it very, very illuminating. Remember, you can always find us at winecountryatwork.com. And until next week, I want all of you to be well.